in front of this guy. He's right behind me. He's in my space, really. But he's just almost, we're touching in a very uncomfortable way. So, and we're really close. And he said, he's right behind me, and he says, "As God is my witness, he's broken in half." For the love of God, stop the man. They killed him. So finally I said, okay. I turn around. And this kid's son, about 14, 15 years old, says, "We're sorry, JR, he does this all the time." He got the whole thing memorized. So Jerry, the point I'm making is that Jerry and I had no idea that Boley was going to get tossed off the hell himself. So everything you heard from he and I was our natural feeling. And I think that's why our work together resonated over the years, because we were organic, we were real. And we were storytellers, and we loved it. We had great product to broadcast. Hey, look, I'll tell you, we all like to break the late great Gorilla Monsoon would say, "Don't break your arm patting yourself on the back." But we'd all like to be able to do that. But listen, here's the story. It's real simple. If you want to be a broadcaster, the wrestlers make the music. Period. The announcers provide the lyrics. Period. Everything starts with the music. It's all, as Shakespeare said, the play's the thing. In wrestling or sports entertainment, the wrestlers are the thing. It's all about the athletes, it's all about the performers, all about the showmen, and all these men and women that do these great things. And then if guys like Jerry and I, and Lance, Gene, Pepper, whomever, even Terry Funk, where'd he go? Did he go sleep again?
We're waiting for Terry Funk.
My egg sucking dog. And so anyway, it's all about the talent. It all starts with the talent. So if you're practicing at home, pick out a real good match that has good music, and then add your lyrics to it, see how you compliment it. So it's all about the talent. And we had some, in our heyday there, when WWE was having troubles in the late mid-90s, the Attitude Era came about, and then the company went public and things got really good. It was because of the talent. It's always because of the talent and the leadership from the top. So the talent's the thing. So that's kind of what we did. And so Jerry and I would sit down at the table. We had no idea what the finishes were, how long the match is going to go, nothing. We watched the monitor and we used our instincts. And thank God I had the best partner around that pulled me through and made our team better.
How do I follow that now? Well, maybe I'll tell the story about why JR, as he said, was always so prepared with all the information about everybody's background, knowing all the holds, and it made it so easy for me. All I really had to do was just show up and sit down, and I got kind of thrown into the position of being an announcer or color commentator. I never once thought about doing that when I started in this business. I just wanted to wrestle, and had always been a wrestler throughout the Memphis territory, and even when I first came to WWE. And somewhere along the line during the Monday Night Wars, I remember, I don't know who I was getting ready to wrestle, but it was when WCW, I think, came on like an hour before WWE, and they were live, and of course, then we were live, and at that time, Randy Savage was the color commentator along with Vince McMahon, and we were getting ready to do the show, and maybe just a little over an hour before the show. And I remember Vince was walking around and said, "Anybody seen Randy? I want to get with him, and we need to go to the show. Anybody seen Randy?" And suddenly somebody said, when the WCW show started, somebody said, "Vince, I think you might want to look at the TV." And he went back in his office, and there, of course, was Randy Savage on the WCW show. And he just left without any warning or any notice or anything like that, and showed up. And I'll never forget, Vince just like it didn't even faze him. He just looked, and then just like a little look of disdain on his face. And he came out of his office, and he looked at me and he said, "King, would you do the color commentary with me tonight? And then by next week I'll find somebody to do it on a permanent basis if you'll just do it with me tonight." And then, of course, that's 24 years ago, and been doing it ever since. But when JR came along, and as I said, it did make it so easy on me. I used to say, this guy, he would come up with some off-the-wall statistic or something, and I'd always say, I bet you know Willie Nelson's middle name, and which, by the way, you did, don't you, right?
I don't remember.
Hugh. That's it. Willie Nelson's middle name is, yeah. He knew where Hidden Valley Ranch was. He knew everything that you would think of. And in the meantime, all I was doing was just, I was sitting there watching the matches like a fan at home and acting like I was talking to my buddy here, JR, and I would just say the things that I would say if I were, sitting home on a sofa watching the show. And somehow it worked really well for us. But if you remember, JR, we used to do, at one time, there was a time where we did have to do a certain amount of preparation. Vince McMahon loves meetings, and he loves to talk about somebody wanting to be over-prepared. That's Vince McMahon. So and it's still to this day, there's like 3 or 4 production meetings every day before the show. And so JR and I used to have to go to the production meeting, and of course, Pat Patterson, who's asleep, and Pat, wake up. That's what you do during the production meetings. I know that. During these production meetings, Vince would go over with the writers or the different people, the agents and everything. They would go over their ideas for the show and talk about some things that were going to happen. And it was, without a doubt, the most boring 3 or 4 hours. I mean, literally, it would start at like 10 o'clock and go to 1 o'clock. And you just sit there trying to fight, going to sleep, and I was just miserable. And then we all knew that by the time the meeting would end, 2 hours later, it would all change. So an example of that, one day we're sitting in a meeting, and this was when Michael Cole had come along, and we're sitting in this production meeting, and they had the idea that The Undertaker was going to come out on the stage, and he had like an altar laid there, and he was going to bring out one of his acolytes and lay him on this altar, and then he was going to do some incantations over him, and he was going to levitate the guy, right? He was going to rise up off this altar, and of course, me and Michael Cole were going to be astounded. He's just going to be up on the stage. We were going to go out of our minds when this Undertaker has the power to make this acolyte levitate. So they had this big apparatus that they had gotten from a magic show, a magician, that had this long metal arm that would come out through the curtains, and of course the guy would lay on that, and somehow, then at the right time, this arm would raise the guy up in the air, and we would all go crazy. So we get to the show that night, and we start doing the show live, and so Cole and I are all the way down by the ring, and then the altar gets set up, bong, here comes the Undertaker out, he brings out, what was the guy's name? Do you remember the guy that was, the one that used to run around naked, do the streaking? Midian, yeah, that's who it was. So Midian, Dennis Knight. So they bring Midian out, and they lay him on this altar, and he's laid out, and the lights go down, and suddenly the Undertaker's doing this, and all these, he's waving his arms over him and everything, and we're watching, and Michael Cole says, "Oh my God, look, King, he's rising in the air, he's levitating." Now I'm looking, and I couldn't really tell that, so I didn't say anything, right? And then Cole just is going crazy. Oh my gosh, what kind of power does the Undertaker have to do this? And suddenly in our ears, Vince McMahon comes on and says, "Cole, you stupid son of a bitch. We changed that, he's not levitating." So something had happened with the magic arm or something like that that wouldn't work. So of course they just took that out of the show, but they failed to tell Michael and I. And so this was on live television, and so after that, I went to Vince, and of course we got chewed out afterwards. It was mostly Cole because I didn't say anything. So I went to Vince and I said, "Vince, you know what? It would really help my broadcast if I didn't know anything about what's going on. If I could just go out there and react to what I'm seeing for the first time, just like a fan." I said, that I think is the most successful way for me to work. And he said, "You know, King, I think you're right." And so from that time on, I never had to go to another production meeting. And then over my illness, I came back to join Jerry.
I told Vince that, you know, I really ought to spend more time with Jerry, so I don't really need to go to his production meetings. So I didn't go to the, thanks to him, I got out of the production meetings as well. So you go on the air at 9 o'clock Eastern, back in the day, 2 hours, which is a lot easier to watch than a 3-hour show. My God. Not just WWE, anything. 3 hours for anything. Hey, when you get to be my age, 3 hours is a hell of a long time. You know, I don't even buy, you know, green bananas anymore. One can't agree for everybody, Jerry. So, but our deal was more, we were more organic, more natural. We're two fans, love the business. And you can't really be a great broadcaster of anything if you don't have a feeling, an emotional attachment to the product. I don't care what you do. Football, I'm going to do boxing on Saturday night, and I don't even know who the fighters are. But I know my job is to tell stories and make you care about who these guys are. And it's really unique because it's like going to territory and getting a bunch of new talent coming in. You've got to get them over to your audience. So you got to tell the people got to know something about them. So we'll do that on Saturday night. It's the same deal. They're going to make the music, and we're obligated to provide the lyrics for that deal. So, but our deal was, Lance, when you were in your heyday, did you know all the finishes?
No, sir. We didn't have any attendance in any meetings, and we never had to put up with all that kind of stuff.
We didn't have meetings.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't have the meetings, and all we had to do was go talk to Jerry Lawler and find out. Well, I don't know. We'll just see. Jerry made it happen. Whatever was going to happen, it would come out of Jerry Lawler, and it was the way you got the information if you wanted to get any. Actually, what we did was sit there and try to brush up on our southern accent so that all the northerners would say, those guys have got that southern accent in there. Who wants to listen to them? Go away. And that's kind of the way we handled the thing to go on. We just sit there and were asked. The promoter came to us, Jerry Jarrett said, what do you want to do? Do you want to come in? We'd like to have you into the production meeting where we're talking over the show and what's going to be happening in there. And in unison, Dave and I both said the same thing. We don't want to hear anything about it because it's just what these guys ended up discovering in there. If you don't hear anything about it, it's all new to you. Reaction is what happened. And why you were, and I have people who show the courtesy to say, sometimes, boy, it sure looked like that you guys, it was so real, and all of this, and what you were saying, and all that, like when we were talking about the empty university, the empty battle between Jerry and Terry, and saying, what about that cigarette that you were smoking in there? And then they caught you throwing it away. That was a piece of genius, the way you got that production in there to make it appear real. Guess what? It was real. That's exactly what happened. And the same reaction when it was time to laugh, Abe, we laughed. I mean, we did that, and I know that was not approved on in a lot of places, and I will just simply say they were working so hard to have the word fake taken out of the English dictionary that what they're going to do was forget about what they were there to, and that's provide entertainment and all. And that's the way it was, and everybody approached it the same way. Jerry was the king man. I'm going to tell you, I never saw a kid come out and pick up as many things about wrestling professionally. A little later we'll talk. And Jerry was unbelievable. He asked me one day to go over to Treadwell High School, which was his high school. He said, would you come over there? I'm going to be on at intermission time. I'm going to be on with the people in there when the kids are out there. And so we get over there, and this is not too long after Jerry started, and then I was working with him, of course, and we were driving over there, and as we were going along, Jerry says to me, don't put your head out there like you're going to do anything. Your big nose will make us take a big right-hand turn. I tell you, he saved that for the audience too, and they broke up a whole lot bigger than you guys did. I guess you had to be there.
Are there any questions next, Lance? Or hang on 1 second. I want to mention too that
Well, you know, some of you old timers that actually worked for Leroy. Leroy was blind. Leroy was a big time college wrestler at Oklahoma State, and he had one eye. He lost his sight when he was like 9 or 10. So he wrestled all those years with one eye. NCAA champion, All American, all that good stuff. He became the NWA junior heavyweight champion when it was one of the big territories was Hollywood. And I remember when I first went to my first meeting with Bill Watts and Leroy when I was 22 years old, I was amazed by all these pictures of James Cagney and Leroy, Lucille Ball and Leroy. Well, he told me some dandy stories about Lucille Ball too. Easy now. That's on the late show, the midnight show. Seriously, Leroy was a big star, so Leroy then had a car accident, they say. I've heard big stories about that. Anyway, he lost his sight in his other eye in 1951. And the tournament to crown a new champion was won by Vern Gagne, by the way. That was big. So, but Leroy was blind, so Leroy was my color partner. So I went down at Shreveport to get ready to do TV. I mean, I was there. I was Leroy's driver, valet. Got into the bathroom, make sure his pants were zipped, make sure the colors were coordinated. I was his valet. You know, so, and that was all part of my learning curve. I loved it. And so I go down there to Shreveport, and Bill comes out, he says, did you bring any other clothes? And I didn't, you know, I had a pair of slacks on and a shirt, kind of a funky shirt, kind of like Jerry's wearing. And he said, well, I need you to do the commentary tonight. And I need to have black pants on because that was really tough. I think I had a little seepage. So he says, he gave me $100. And it's one of the few times in my life, at 22, I ever saw a $100 bill. And I also had another purse that day. I'd never driven a Cadillac. So I drove Leroy from Tulsa to Shreveport. It's about 5 or 6 hours. And of course, along the way, one of those trips was our trip to go down and murder the $1 Million Man. That's another story for another time. But that was I was going to be the accomplice to a murder, and that was a little serious deal, and I was kind of worried about that. I just didn't want to go to prison and sleep on my back for 20 years. You know, I just meet somebody. Hi, I'm your cellmate, Big Marge. You know, I'll get you some cigarettes. Just leave me alone. So Leroy was my partner. Said, "Well, Bill gives you a $100 bill. I'll go to Dillard's. You guys somebody got Dillard's in their hometown, I promise you." And I spent $78 on a blue blazer, a light blue shirt, and a red tie because I saw the weathermen wear it on TV. I figured it was the official broadcaster's uniform. And the sport coat and the shirt and the tie came to $78. And Bill, of course, the first thing he asked for was the receipt and his change. I owed him 22 bucks. So I put the little blue coat on and my shirt and tie, and I go out there to do my first broadcast ever in my life. My partner's blind, so they said you got to be very descriptive in how you talk, how you do your commentary, because you got to bring Leroy in, and I can't touch him like Pepper was talking about. You know, that's the old announcer thing under the table. You do tap and you talk. It's your turn. Well, if Leroy, you tap him and say, "What are you doing? What's wrong?" Nothing. So you can't touch him because he's a little jumpy. So you have to be very descriptive, and we did that. And but I learned just to tell the story. And if you laid out the thing to him, he would visualize the headlock. He would visualize, if you were descriptive enough to tell that the hip lock was a high hip lock, he took him over to grab him an arm bar. Leroy could visualize all that, then he could provide color commentary. So that was my first gig. 2 one-hour shows in my $78 outfit, and it was got everything started. It was all by accident. But sometimes that's the best way. Sometimes those things happen. You back into deals. So it was a good thing for me, and I did it for 40 years, and I still do it some. Having a good time doing New Japan stuff on Friday nights. I'm doing boxing on Saturday. I'm doing some MMA. So I'm staying busy. But it all started, if I had my druthers, what would I rather be doing? Well, I'd rather be on Monday Night Raw, where I used to be, and raise hell and have fun for 3 hours. But that's not in the cards. My Bell's palsy didn't do me any favors, because I can't smile, so I'm always perceived as being grumpy. I do have a southern accent, can't help that either. I am somewhat a chubby little fellow. So it is what it is. And that's, Pepper made a good remark earlier. Don't allow other people to define you. I got defined because of my Bell's palsy, my southern accent, and then the damn HD TV came in and kind of screwed me. all the blemishes and the little issues are very, oh, look at that, my God. 70-inch TV, look at that. Look at that face. So I had a great time, a great run, but I loved it all. And sometimes we can love things like that too much. I wish in my lifetime I had loved put as much passion in other things in my life than I did in the rest of it.
Young women.
We've got to pick your spots there and prioritize things. But anybody that gets in the wrestling business and could be a successful broadcaster, I applaud. It's so much fun because you're around the boys, and there's nothing like being around wrestlers. It's just absolutely. That's why we're all here. We're drawn to something. There's got to be a common denominator. It's not the $45 room rate at the Gold Coast. What are you going to do this week? I don't know. I'll get a $45 rate in Vegas. Hey, let's go. Go on.
It's the young women.
Yeah. Well, that's I think can we get the Q&A?
I want to get to that, but I want to say too, let's do a salute to the wives. Jan Ross, Jim's better half. She was in the back. Started with Andy.
Yeah, first of all, as JR said, it was a collect call. And I also want to elaborate on the young women thing, JR. I'm older now, and things have changed. My favorite adult movie now is Debbie Does Dialysis. Andy Kaufman was like a gift from heaven to me especially, but I even think to the wrestling business itself. Andy was a very talented young guy who most people know him, of course, from the TV show Taxi, comedy clubs, and all of this sort of thing. And Andy was from Long Island, New York. Grew up, the story that he told me is he grew up as a kid growing up. He was a huge wrestling fan, and he found himself being like, I think maybe most young guys do. He was a fan. He said, I was always a fan of the bad guys. And I think that what he saw on television from these bad guys, it had such an influence on Andy's career. For instance, he told me, he said, I used to watch Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, and I could tell that he was intentionally trying to make the people hate him. And he said, but they still, he was still popular. And I think that Andy sort of carried that over into his career in show business, in the fact that he used to say he would hate to be called a comedian. He'd say, I've never told a joke in my life, I'm not a comedian. And Andy was sort of a performance artist, and he enjoyed getting a negative response from an audience more so than he did a positive one. He didn't like for people to laugh at him. Sometimes if, he would go and do a show at a university or campus, and if the people started laughing and saying, hey, do Latka, come on, let's hear Latka, Andy would just stop, look at the entire audience, and there may be several hundred or thousand people in the audience, and he would just slowly walk off stage, get a podium, bring it back, set it down, and he had the book, The Great Gatsby. Put in there, and then put some orange juice in there. He said, oh, and by the way, get something for Gene while you're at it too.